This ready?
Yes.
Everybody. My name is Jim Brown, the Chair of the Board of Finance, and I want to welcome everyone to the Board of Finance Public Budget Hearing on March 16th. So we'll call this meeting to order. Let's begin by rising and saying the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag
to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, indivisible, liberty and justice for all.
Okay, well, good evening. And as I said earlier, welcome to the Board of Finance Public Budget Hearings for our 2021 budget. My name is Jim Brown. For the public, I'm the Chair of the Board of Finance. And just a couple of words before we start. I want to thank the administration for setting up a process to move forward with these budget hearings in these very trying circumstances, and they are trying circumstances and very challenging for all of us. I want to thank the public for their understanding on how we're going to conduct the budget hearing due to this current situation. So we're conducting these hearings with two goals in mind. Number one, to take the necessary precautions under these circumstances that we are all facing, and two, to have a transparent discussion, to do our best to conduct our responsibilities as a board, to work with our first selectwoman, the department heads, and the Board of Ed, so that when we recommend a budget to the RTM, it's done so with due diligence and to the best of our ability. This setup right now is challenging, but it is doable, and we can get this done for the town. And we appreciate the IT department and Dave Kelly for setting this up for us. So right now we have myself and the Vice Chair, Chris DeWitt, of the Board of Finance at Town Hall. And with us are the CFO, Caitlin Bossi, Budget Director, Linda Gardner, Chief Admin Officer, Tom Bremer, our first Selectwoman, Brenda Kupchak, our Town Attorney, Jim Baldwin, and minutes are taken. FairTV is on. They are recording as well. Right now, I realize on your screen, you can just see the town seal and the flags. The other 7 members of the Board of Finance, Mary LeClaire, Jim Walsh, Jack Testani, Ed Bateson, John Matola, Sheila Marmion, and Lori Charlton are all online, virtual survey through WebEx. I can see or hear the board, and they can see me, and I will be able to see when they raise their hand. So each department head is prepared to present. They will either come into the conference room that we were in, or they will call in themselves, and the board will be available to ask questions. There is a conference call number for the public. There are instructions on how to call in on that conference line on the town website. I think in numerous places, but definitely on the Board of Finance agenda drop-down. We will not be taking public comment tonight, but we will have a time and place for public comment at a later date, one way or another, which is currently being worked out. So again, I want to thank the administration and the department heads for the work they've done all the work they've done to put into the budget. And I want to thank the Board of Ed for the same, and the intent is to hear them on Wednesday night. Of course, I would like to thank our Board of Finance members for their patience and flexibility so that we can do our job. I know there's concern with this process, but under the circumstances, it works. It works for the FOI, and it allows us to do our town government and town business. So, with that, I'd like to open up to the board for any comments. Mr. Walsh.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Can you hear me?
I can.
I'd like to make a motion that we adjourn these proceedings for the date certain being 30 days from today. With all that's going on in our town, state, and federal governments, all three claiming declarations of emergency, I think we need to adjourn our budget process for these 30 days. Governor has already issued an executive order number 7C, stating in paragraph 5 that all deadlines for the purpose of municipal budgets for the fiscal year ending June 30th, 2021 can be delayed for 30 days. Further, our charter under Article 12.2C allows the Board of Selectmen, with the approval of the Board of Finance, to modify and vary the budget submission process in the interest of efficiency or in the event of special circumstances. I can think of no other circumstances that would meet the definition of, quote, special circumstance than this COVID-19 crisis. I think it would be insensitive to not only members of this board, but also to the taxpayers and residents of this town to go forward with this process. We are all going through a lot right now, including business and personal stresses caused by this crisis. I personally am trying to save a local business that I'm general counsel to that is struggling to keep over 300 people employed and receiving their checks for the next several weeks, or hopefully as long as this crisis takes. At the same time, I'm trying to get my son back from Brussels, Belgium, where he's on a semester abroad, before he's being forced to stay there because the European Union is closing all boundaries and the president has stopped flights. You all, just like the rest of our fine community, are dealing with similar or worse circumstances. Mr. Chairman, I know the stresses that you're going through personally with your business and all that's involved with this coronavirus crisis, all day long and into the evening. Further, this budget might need to change after this crisis passes. We have no idea as a country, state, or town where this is going. Further, we will be taking countless hours and nights of time of various members of the emergency management team away, trying to focus on this budget in the middle of the town's emergency. How dare us? To me, this is quite ridiculous. We should be giving the emergency management team and all of its members time to do what they need to do while also dealing with their families. So therefore, I'm making this motion to postpone because the governor has given us this time, as he has given to all municipalities. I would hope that you would all join me in stopping this insanity and postponing these meetings for 30 days. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Walsh.
Mr. Brown, can I speak as an official?
Yeah, I just need to get a second. A second to Mr. Walsh's motion. Do I have a second to it? Mr. Bateson? Mr. Bateson, would you like to make a comment or just second right now?
I'll make a brief comment. I'll say the last meeting we were at, I was adamant that we continue, reserve these times for these meetings. I am, quite frankly, in shock at what's happened over the past week. My life has changed drastically. A lot of my friends, acquaintances' lives have changed drastically. I have been trying to be a diligent representative of this board and dedicate some time for this and set it aside and review what I'm supposed to. And quite frankly, I am just overwhelmed by the factors that have entered my life that I have to deal with, and they just take precedent. And, you know, to Jim's point, I agree. I just think that it's a little insensitive to the first responder. I really think the town needs to be focused on this crisis. The budget right at this point is secondary. That's just where I am right now.
All right,
Thank
you, Mr. Bateson. I do want to recognize our first selectwoman, Mrs. Kupchak. She can make a statement, and then I'll turn it back to the board. Mrs. Kupchak?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you. I appreciate the comments. However, I would just offer that our emergency response team has been in full action. We have been working all throughout the weekend and all throughout every day. And if some of you saw my comments today regarding making plans for our town, and we will be shutting down Town Hall for 3 days. We put in a lot of effort to put together this tele-town hall format so that our government could proceed, especially the most important boards, regarding our budget process, because we felt it was really important. And it is a little difficult to find out that this is a problem for some members 10 minutes into the meeting, after all the preparation that went into putting it together by the administration and the emergency operations team. My concern is that a 30-day delay in these proceedings is not going to change what's happening in our state or in our nation, and frankly, I believe it will be much worse. In 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, 120 days, I don't know. So I was hoping that we could at least have our meetings in this format and allow us to get through this piece of it, allow members to review the budget, which has been out for 2 weeks about now, so that we could at least try to have some semblance of normalcy in our government. We have postponed all other boards and commissions because they don't have urgent items. But I would like to at least try to get through this process and have our budget passed, which can be amended and adjusted after it's passed at any time. We are all, facing some unprecedented situations here, myself included, leading this town in a pandemic situation. But I would just ask for the courtesy to allow these proceedings to move forward as best we can and take conditions on the ground as they come forward so that we can at least move through this process. We need to have a budget. And so I'm hoping that members will let us proceed in this manner. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Kupchak. I'd like to recognize others from our board if they'd like to weigh in. Mr. DeWitt?
Thank you. I was watching the news today, and Fox News said the United States is 3 weeks behind Italy, where Italy is right now. Well, they're in pretty rough shape. So to fast forward 3 weeks from now, we would be done with our budget process. In fact, I was sharing with the chairman tonight. We've got 3 budget hearings this week, and we've got the beginning of next week. First, Monday and Tuesday are snow days. Well, I'm pretty sure we're not going to use those. So we could probably even drag it into those 2 days if it didn't cause too much disruption. We could be done with this by next Tuesday. And like I said, things are not great right now, but I don't think they're so terrible that we're not meeting. And so far, this meeting seems to be going okay. And I'm thinking waiting a month is just a variable that I'm not willing to support it at this time.
All right. Thank you, Mr. DeWitt. Anyone else like to weigh in? Mrs. Marmion?
Thank you. Can you hear me?
We can. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks. I appreciate what Mr. Walsh and Mr. Bateson have to say. These are really trying times. I agree with you, but I have to say that with Mr. DeWitt, in terms of things might get worse before they get better, I think we should actually seize this opportunity of what I'm going to call a relative calm to go through the budget process. And I am fully aware that some of our decisions, we're not operating with full information in terms of the full impact of what this coronavirus might do in terms of revenue to our town and services that we're going to deliver, and frankly, how we're going to budget for certain items. But I think we should start this process. I think it's so important for us to stay in communication and to have the opportunity to be in close communication with our first select woman and the other department heads as we go through this process. I honestly would really be concerned about going radio silent right now. I want to be in touch with the department heads to see what the impact is so that we can make real-time decisions. And then, as our first select woman said, we can amend this budget when we have, if things change drastically. So I would not support this motion.
Thank you, Mrs. Marmion. Anyone else from the board would like to weigh in? Mr. Mottola?
Thank you. Can you hear me?
We can hear you, thank you.
You can hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
All right. Thank you. So the only thing I would say is I think we need to move forward, but you can hear me, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, sorry about that.
We can hear you and that.
You can hear your bings too.
That's not my bang. I don't know what I'm doing.
Yeah, you're good, John. You're good. Just keep going.
All right. The only thing I would say is we do have some additional time, and I think we should go forward. But as a board, I think we need to be a little sensitive to maybe some of our members' concerns from a professional and private standpoint. And that if, Mr. DeWitt said just a couple of minutes ago that we have some extra dates here and there, if we need to move a meeting that's scheduled to one of those other dates to accommodate some of our members, because I get it. There's a lot going on, and I can see how it may be difficult to focus on this. So, I'm not going to support the motion, but I think if Mr. Bateson, for example, or Mr. Walsh said, I'm going to have trouble making this meeting and I know they have legitimate reasons, or any other member, then I think we should just maybe try to accommodate them if we can. So that's all I have to say. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Mottola. Mr. Testani?
Yeah, hi. I just want to support, what the First Selectwoman said. I think as leaders of the community, we have to try to have as much of a normalcy as we can. We understand we're certainly in a pandemic. There's a national and state emergency. Having said that, we have this budget in a limited amount of time. And I agree with the fact that, things are going to get worse before they're going to get better. So the sooner we can get through this, was that clear, Jim?
Very clear. We got it, Jack. Thank you.
Okay. So I'm just going to vote. I just want to be clear. I'm not in support of the motion.
Got it. Thank you. Mrs. Charlton?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I also believe that we should go forward with this process. I appreciate that the governor has provided an extra 30 days to complete it, but it's my belief that extra 30 days should be used to, react, amend, or deal with the process in whatever we can to understand what's coming at us. The idea that we will, get through this quickly and be done and pass it on, when things are changing daily and the situation is as fluid as it is. I think we remember where we were a week ago, and no one was anticipating where we would be today, or a few people were anticipating where we would be today. I think the thing that resonated with me that Mr. Walsh said was that he said this budget may need to change. I would go further than that, and I would say the budget will certainly need to change. And the town employees, the town businesses, the whole town is going to be impacted in ways that we don't quite understand yet. We don't understand what relief may be available to us through the state government, through the federal government. And so there's a lot of different scenarios that may happen, but I don't think there is a lot to be gained by just putting this to the side and starting 30 days from now, I think we could get through a lot of it and perhaps use that extra time to deal with things that we don't know about at the moment and things that may come up. So I do appreciate the, the burdens that this puts on everyone. I agree with Mr. Watola that we should be as flexible as we can with our colleagues if that's possible. But I would not support the motion because I think it's important to get started and get as much done as we can. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else from the board like to weigh in? Mrs. LeClaire?
Sure. I'm not sure quite how to do this. Can you hear me?
Fine. Yep.
Okay. So I agree with what Lori just said. I think we should try to continue on with the meetings, maybe spread them out a little bit more if we find that there's too much going on. But I want to give this a try and see if we can make this work.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. LeClaire. So I'll just weigh in here. I respect what Mr. Walsh has presented and the reasons. It's true. There is a lot of stress right now in all of our businesses, especially ones that, well, I shouldn't say especially, but those of us that are in local business and trying to run a local business, there's a lot going on. However, my concern is what are we going to be facing 30 days from now, 10 days from now, 5 days from now? It could get worse. I like to try and keep the continuity of government. We have the technology right now. It's all set up. We vote on April 2nd. Let's hear what the department's heads have to say. They're ready to speak. They're ready to present. They have been ready. They've done a lot to prepare for this. Let's just review it. Let's hear them all out. Let's hear the first select woman out. And as time goes on and over the next couple weeks and things change, we have time to make those changes. But my thinking is let's get this over to the RTM, and then they have a couple months before they have to take this on. So we have time. And right now we're all here. This can work, and we're prepared. We're prepared to go. We may not be prepared 15 days from now because we do not know what's going to happen. I agree, and I make the commitment that we'll accommodate where we can. We'll be flexible where we can, and I'm very sensitive to what's happening out there, not only in our work life but in our personal life. We're all going through the same thing. Not that everyone has someone abroad, but we all have children that we have to get back from different cities or colleges. They're working from home now. We want them home when we can. We're dealing with a lot. But we are set for this right now, and we're prepared. So I would say let's move forward. As much as I understand Mr. Bateson and Mr. Walsh, I can't accept the motion. I can't agree with moving this for however many days. So with that said, I'll turn it back to the board for any last comments, if anybody has them, and then we'll take this to a vote. Mr. Walsh, I see your hand up.
Yeah, you might as well just take it to a vote. I mean, clearly, I have people in my conference room right now. I mean, that's why I missed the last vote half an hour ago, because I was in those meetings. But I understand, moving it to a different night. I'm dealing with stuff today. I think we're all dealing with stuff today, and it changes every day. So whether we have these extra days is not going to matter. So I understand. People say they understand these sensitivities. They don't. Let's just move on. Go to a vote.
All right. Let's do just that. Let's go to a vote. All those in favor of postponing the Board of Finance public hearings, say aye.
Aye.
Mr. Walsh?
Aye.
Aye.
Wait, no.
No, this is for postponing. This is for postponing. So Mr. Walsh says aye. Mr. Bateson?
Aye.
Okay. Mrs. LeClaire?
No.
Mrs. Charlton?
Nay.
Mr. Testani?
No.
Mrs. Marmion?
Nay.
Mr. DeWitt,
Nay.
and I'm a nay. So motion fails 2-7.
You forgot me.
Mr. Matola, where are you? You disappeared.
I'm right here.
I'm going by pictures.
No,
Someone else jumped on.
I was leaning over, sorry. No.
Come on, Mr. Matola, stay with us here. Okay. All right, so
I'm right
it's
next to my
2-7.
bed, I'm gonna go to sleep soon.
Oh, my God.
Okay. All right, so we are ready to move on. We'll go to the item number 3 on the agenda, which is the summary budget presentation by the woman, Mrs. Kupchak. Welcome, and thank you for being here.
Thank you. I approach the, if I stay with 6 feet away. Thank you.
What's our,
Well,
whatever you'd like.
All right. Thank you. And I appreciate all of your cooperation and willingness to do this in this way. It's been a hell of a challenge as a newly minted first select woman to be dealing with this situation. And I understand this is a real challenge for all of us. It has been extraordinarily challenging for me. But I'm thinking we could at least get through these meetings. And of course, you know, the budget vote isn't for a while for you. And we're always available by phone if you have any questions, or by email, and department heads are also available anytime to answer questions or respond to emails up until the time we're ready to vote. So, all right, this is a little different. We had our first Board of Selectmen meeting today this same way, and it was quirky, but we got through it. We were able to do the town's business, and so here we go. So most of you have saw the, can everyone hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Most of you saw my budget sort of PowerPoint presentation. It was posted on the internet, and also I think you got a copy of it. Jen may have sent.
Yep.
And of course you have your budget books. So again, I just want to, I thanked all of the department heads and the finance department for their hard work that they put in over the last couple of months. You know, it's been a challenging time, a new administration and a lot of changes, obviously dealing with the fill pile issue when we were putting this together. So it's been a lot, but we were able to put it together. And so just, I'm just going to kind of go through it. I'm not going to read every word, but the vision of this budget when I came into this position, I noticed a lot of deficiencies in many areas of our town government, lack of investments, and so meeting with all the departments and hearing what they had to say gave me a clear sense of what I believed we needed to do to answer the call of what residents had asked me to do throughout the spring, summer, and fall last year while I was running for this position. And people said they wanted us to boost our economic development, and they wanted us to invest in our town. They wanted a more user-friendly town government, and then they wanted us to be able to get our costs under control and stabilize taxes. So I don't believe you can just simply cut your way out of these things. I think you have to invest. So we in our budget, you'll see we've made investments. I've put investments I believe will be able to allow us to modernize our town government for efficiencies, including modernization and technology to be able to create efficiencies, streamline a lot of services more efficiently for our town government, and a real emphasis on economic development that I believe with the right amount of attention and strategic work that we will be able to grow the grand list more than it was grown in the past. And I'm hoping for that. I want to work really hard. Now, obviously, we're facing a very serious situation right now, so it does seem is totally different from when I built this budget. And I know all businesses are taking a hit right now, but this is how we built the budget. As you know, I made a cut to the education budget with the Board of Selectmen, made a reduction to the education budget because I believed that budget had increased so incredibly high over just a short amount of time, and that we have to start having real conversations with our Board of Education and the school administration coming this summer, after this budget process is over. Somebody's dog is barking. You need to mute your phone.
Right. So here's what you could do to help us here is mute your phone when you're not talking, or we can have our IT director mute it for you. But he can't figure out which one has the dog. So if you can mute your phone.
You should be like on TV.
Mrs. Kupchak can then continue. Okay, thank you.
Okay, so my budget that I worked on with my administration, our department heads, we're looking to maintain our excellent schools, modernize our town government, prioritize economic development, and invest in our town's infrastructure. The budget does include an increase in spending of more than 3% in education, in the increase that they asked for. Funds our long-term liabilities, modernizes town government to increase services to the public, expands senior and disabled tax relief to maximize benefits for the lowest income seniors, maintains the rainy day fund at its highest level, and increased town revenue for building permits, fire marshal fees, and investment income. And it increases legal fees due to the ongoing investigation. As you can see on page 7, there's just the budget summary, and it gives you, the numbers, the budget in 2020, and then the budget in 2021, and then the various changes. And then page 8, budget expenditure 19. We were looking at this budget year versus the upcoming budget year and the changes. Last year's budget was $316.4 million, and then you add in the consumer indexing, 7.9, teacher compensation, 1.7, town health care costs, which was a 12% increase, 1.2. Just want to add in that we had our new HR director start today, and we're going to be looking at trying to find savings in our health care because it's pretty high comparatively to other towns. So the person that I hired has a really has an expertise in this area. So I'm looking forward to what he's going to come up with. Combined ECC costs $500,000. New employees $400,000. Pension $300,000. Waste testing costs $200,000. Legal $100,000. Revaluation, $100,000, and then fund balance contribution, $1.3 million.
That's emergency communication center, not school ECC.
No, right. Emergency, the tri-party with the state, Westport, and our town. Page 9. This is the revenue from last year's budget versus ours. This budget coming up. Current year taxes, $10.3 million. Senior disabled tax relief. We actually changed that when we made this slide up. I don't know if we updated in the slides we gave them, but we actually put in $400,000. Prior year taxes, $2.3 million. Investment income, $1.4. ECC revenue, $1.2. Permit fees, $500,000. Fire marshal fees, $200,000. And then on page 10, budget recommendations. Board of Education budget was $188,758,852. It is our largest budget driver, representing 66% of the total town budget. So I believe that shows the town's commitment to education. Recommended $1.4 million reduction, which really was an $800,000 decrease in the insurance, was actual versus budget estimates. And we actually reduced the budget by $600,000, not $625,000. And personnel was the largest cost driver at 79% of the total Board of Education budget. The next one was the slide, because when we were researching this, we spent a lot of time, obviously, putting this budget together and working day and night on it. And so we just came up with some, this graph, and my chief of staff put this together because she just thought it was an interesting sort of graph to see, where we were over the years and how and where we are. And the projected budget requests were always on a 3.63 average yearly increase. So we were, we're looking at kind of highlighting the fact that we need to, as I was saying earlier, we need to sit down as a community with our Board of Education and our school administrators and our town boards, Board of Finance and RTM, and this administration, and start having some honest discussions about how we are going to get some control on these costs. Because frankly, 3.5% increases every single year, and as I said this at the Board of Selectmen meeting, it's unsustainable. And we have to get a handle on it and figure out how we can deliver what we need to for students without having these large increases year after year. And as I mentioned during my Board of Selectmen meeting when I was presenting the budget, was that, we are responsible to look out for everyone in our community. We have to maintain an excellent school system. It makes our town more desirable, and it's our moral obligation for the children. But at the same time, we have a moral obligation to those people who do not have children in the school system, and especially our seniors who are trying to stay in their homes. And increase after increase after increase, it just drives them out. So that's a discussion, I believe, and this next slide shows basically how the money goes. Where does the money go? People, where does the money go? So you've got your town budget, and then you have the education at 58%, and then the 8% is shown is what the costs that the town bears on behalf of the education system, and that's school nurses and a whole bunch of things, private transportation for private school students, and a whole host of workman comp stuff, and a whole host of other things that comes out to about, Linda, is it about 26 million? So the town, in addition to the education budget, is also investing another 26 million into education that the education side of the budget is not picking up. So obviously we're contributing a huge amount. The budget recommendations for the town, so the town side budget recommendation is 137,776, 750, and the emergency communication joint venture with Westport is 2,361,422. So, what are we doing in the budget? We're adding online permitting software to offer one-point entry to interact with our departments, planning and zoning, conservation, historic district, engineering, health, sewer, building, fire marshal, tax collector, and tax assessor. We're adding automated time and attendance workforce management system to monitor employee time, control labor costs, minimize compliance risk, while improving workforce productivity and our services to our public. I'm asking for a part-time grant administrator. One of the glaring things that came up during all the budget discussions with the different departments was they have the technical knowledge to put together these grants, but a lot of times grants require, which I like to refer to as, jazzing up, certain keywords, things that have to be written to make them more attractive, sort of a preface to the technical language. And so this person would also do that, and I heard a lot during these budget meetings was we're missing out on some grants. Because maybe we forgot to, do something in 30 days or 90 days. There's these little things, and a lot of them are very complicated, and they want you to jump through quite a bit of hoops. And even if we lose one $100,000 grant, that's a lot of money. And so I believe a part-time grant coordinator could really assist. And they don't like the finance department tracks, like the money that comes in, but this person would actually be identifying grants, working with each of the departments, making sure their grants fit into the package that grant wants it to, and then following up and identifying new grants. So I think this will more than pay for the position. when we met with the Tom Conley, he, talked about how the inspectors are pulled off a lot of their work, and we do have the second highest fees in the state of Connecticut for our permits. And so, people, developers in Sacred Heart and Fairfield U and all these organizations who are building or investing in businesses or investing in our town should have a reasonable expectation that they're going to get their inspections in a timely fashion. And so the building department is, having to deal with this blight situation. And so he asked if he could have a part-time blight enforcement officer. And I felt that would be an efficient way to help ease the burdens on the building department, which is a very busy department and generates quite a bit of money for our town. AV equipment upgrade for conference room, for our presentations and professional space to welcome prospective new businesses, and to add a new parking app for our residents at the train station parking lots. On the next page, economic development, which I said before, and I'll keep saying, I think we need to make a real push at this to provide tax relief over the long term. Invest in economic development, expand business outreach to our Fairfield, to grow our Fairfield market, and to work not just on attracting business from within the state to come to Fairfield, but outside the state. And so having this business development director, I think, will help increase our visibility outside of Fairfield and outside the state of Connecticut. Mark Barnhart, as many of you know, deals with the affordable housing stuff. He deals with the CBGD stuff. He deals with a whole host of stuff, constantly interacting with the chamber. It doesn't leave a lot of free time to go and sell Fairfield. And we need, I think, that investment, and I think it will be a worthwhile investment. Business community is constantly, reaching out. And as a matter of fact, it was a kind of a nice thing that Mark said that he received a lot of increased calls to the Economic Development Department after I was elected with a renewed interest in our town. So I was happy to hear that, and I want to answer those calls. I want to be available with, business development person to make sure that we are not missing any opportunities that can come toward our town. And improve town services and efficiencies, as we were talking about before, the joint venture with Westport, consolidating the emergency communications system center. It's going to reduce our costs. It's actually the first one in the state. We're getting a lot of money from the state of Connecticut, and we believe it's going to, and the police believe it's going to reduce call processing times and increase effectiveness during large-scale incidents. And there's already other towns reaching out to us saying they want to come in once we have it up, and that will reduce our costs even more. So I'm really excited about us being a leader in that area. Invest in our town infrastructure, maintain town roads and DPW equipment, and there's money in there to do assessment of the senior center about renovations and fixing that up, because as you know, it's a tired-looking senior center and it could use a boost. So this would allow us to have a renovation of the facility. I mean, a spec of how to renovate the facility. Also would include the ADA compliant bathrooms and hire some additional staff to improve services. And again, with the capital long-term plan for the center. So in summary, as I said before, that it was so obvious to me when I came here that we've been, I think prior administrations were trying really hard to maintain these education budgets that came through. And obviously, I served 6 years on the Board of Ed. I served on the RTM. We worked so hard. We invested, just alone when I was on the RTM, voted for over $260 million to invest in our schools' infrastructure and build new schools. We made a huge amount of investment in our schools, and I think we starved our town. We starved it to be able to pay for all of this stuff. And what I'm trying to, my vision for this is to invest back in our town, for the services, so we have great services that people can access that don't have kids in the school system. So those are the highlights of this budget, and I will open it up to any questions.
Oh.
Want to join me, Mr. Berners? Oh,
Okay, so,
so we could talk about this. Right, so I want to bring, you want to sit down here? Sure. I want to bring up this part, now before we go into the whole thing, so during the Board of Selectmen meeting, we were advised by our finance department that morning that, due to the coronavirus impacting the national economy, it was making setting the budget difficult, and then that hourly and daily events were causing interest rates in the market to be in a state of flux. So, we tried to talk about this, reducing the investment income by approximately $1 million at our March 9th budget meeting. And Mr. Flynn suggested we gain more time to evaluate market conditions by awaiting until the Board of Finance review. So in an effort to be prudent with our investment income while still providing the modernization of our town services, I would like to suggest that we apply the Board of Selectmen's $346 million favorable budget adjustments.
346,000.
346,000, sorry.
I wish.
I know, million. That's it, budget's over. And these additional budget adjustments in order to offset the change in investment income. So number one, increase current year revenue by 119 by updating the Board of Assessment Appeals projection to reflect the actual value of appeals under the assessment. 2, decrease active employees' health care by 76,000 as a result of updated renewal numbers based on February claims experience as provided by Aon on March 13, 2020. Decrease risk management expenses by 200,000. Decrease contingency by a total of 248,299, and decrease 50,000 for the marina aside we were going to put in for future, which we weren't determined yet, issues at the marina. Decrease 100,000 in the normal contingency to 2020 level, and decrease 98,000 for wage reserves. And
I have a question.
Okay, I will get right to you, Mr. Mottola. I get it, but I just want to make sure that the presentation for that is complete.
yes, that was just that last part was a recommendation. This just happened at the Board of Selectmen, our last meeting when we voted on it. We got those updated numbers that morning. And so we were trying to respond to conditions that we had just found out about. But, I took Mr. Flynn's advice and thought, let's wait a little longer. Let's see what's going on with the markets. And let's let the Board of Finance have a review and look at it. So we obviously, we wanted to offer a suggestion of what we thought might be helpful options to address that.
Okay, so our investment income, as stated in the budget book, would at this point be overstated by $1 million, correct? Or is that what we're saying?
Yeah, I mean, roughly, I would say this is Tom Bremer, I would say 950 to $1 million. Page 17, the dividend interest income, is line 44001. 2736. 2,736,000.
That's what's stated in the budget.
Yes.
Okay, so.
Where was that, Jim?
Okay, that's on page 17. If you go to page 17 and you look at line item 44001, you'll see dividend/interest income. Okay? Okay, and so that $2,736,000 will look more like $1,736,000.
That's correct.
And what Mrs. Kupchak just went over were recommendations to make up for that shortfall.
That is correct.
Plus the reductions for the 346, is that right?
Well, that includes the Board of Selectmen reduction of 346,000.
This is the number that the Board of Selectmen voted on already. I haven't have a copy. Can we get a copy of that other
Yeah, do we have extra copies?
No, we're making copies, I just mean to distribute to the board.
Yeah, we need to get that to the board.
I think
Okay,
it's
so
important
with
for them
that
to see
said, I'll turn it over to the board. I'll recognize Mr. Mottola. Mr. Mottola?
Take a picture of it.
Yeah, all I wanted to say, Jim, and I think you may have said this, what Ms. Kupchak just read, can we get that in an email or a copy of it, like tomorrow?
Yep.
Yes. We'll get it over
That's
to,
it. Yeah,
we'll get it over to
thank you.
Caitlin, and we'll get it out to the board.
Thank you.
Mr. Testani?
Well, Jim, just so I'm clear in my head, if we're discussing it and we want to implement it in the budget, wouldn't we want to vote on it tonight? I was going to recommend we bring it to a motion.
No, we would not vote on it tonight. We would not vote on it until we vote on the budget.
Okay, gotcha. Thank you.
It's good to have the numbers.
I'm looking at hands that are up there, unless they're just up there and they weren't taken down. So, Mrs. Charlton, did you have a question?
Not at this time. I think, let me take my.
Okay. Mrs. LeClaire,
Okay.
did you have a question? No. Very good. Mr. Walsh, did you have a question?
Yes.
So, we recognize Mr.
Can you hear me?
Yep, go ahead, Jim.
Okay. I mean, this is kind of unprecedented. I mean, I've been doing budgets on both the RTM, Board of Selectmen, and Board of Finance, that a budget would come to us with a $1 million hole in it. First of all, can we get, I'm going to make a request of the administration, can we get the schedule that made up the $2,736,000 that's in the budget on how we got there, all the investments that you have, and how you calculated that at $736,000 at the time the budget was prepared. Further, another request for how it's now calculated, so we can see the difference.
Mr. Bremer?
Sure, that'd be fine. We'll be happy to send it.
And can you explain for us how the coronavirus had any effect on this? Because from what I understand, we're talking about the $62 to $65 million worth of investments that we have, which are pretty much, I thought, mostly interest income. And I thought we were involved, in different funds and bonds, both municipal and private.
Yeah.
And how the coronavirus
No trip.
in the last 2 to 3 weeks
Not just the phone.
caused these investments to drop this dramatically, because I can't see interest rates going down on that amount of investment that could ever possibly reduce the interest income by $1 million.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Walsh. Mrs. Gardner?
Yes, I'll try to explain that, Jim. Jim, we have a total of about $48 million invested in different accounts with Janney Ameriprise. There are general investment accounts. That's aside from some smaller accounts that we use for cash flow. We have coupon interest that's going to roll off. When we initially projected the budget, we know that interest, that cash that rolls off the coupons is reinvested. At the time, the 90-day Treasury was at 2.4%. Now, the 90-day Treasury is at 0.02%. So we're for the most part, we're going to receive no interest from the reinvestment of those that roll off. So now we're going to go back and only calculate the interest, the coupon interest, the cash flow interest. We have a schedule, the other minor accounts, we have the interest rate from those statements calculated out by statement. And another thing we're at risk is for the market change. As you know, the coronavirus didn't cause the interest rates to fall. The Federal Reserve reduced the interest rates on, I think it was March 2nd, by 50 basis points, and just Sunday, they dropped it another 25 basis points. So you've got 75 basis point drop in the Federal Reserve rate. And it's usually when the Federal Reserve drops the interest rates, the 90-day treasuries go up. It's such a unique situation that the 90-day treasuries went down. That never happens. They usually go, move in an inverted way, and they haven't. So we're in strange times, strange waters indeed, and, we're trying to be prudent about this.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. Gardner. Back to you,
Okay,
Mr.
so
Walsh.
all the coupon interest gets invested into treasury bills?
No,
Can it be invested someplace else? Because other bonds are soaring in interest today.
Go ahead, Mrs. Gardner.
no. First of all,
Yep.
we have things that are invested that roll off, and we had planned on reinvesting it. We have set rates at this point for what we're invested in, where we were talking about the roll-off. I have a schedule that shows you what we're expected to get in investment income from the cash flow. So we'll provide that to you.
Okay.
Okay, 48 million is the total amount of investments you guys invest at all for treasury function purposes? There's no more than the 48 million.
No, I said there are other smaller accounts that we use more for cash flow, for payroll purposes. We move it from STIF accounts, and we have.
And how much is the total we have invested?
It varies. It varies depending on payrolls and that type of thing. I will provide that all on the schedule, Jim. It's all laid out. It's all laid out, what bank account it's in, and what interest it is now bearing.
Do we have bonds that are maturing this year?
Yeah, what type of bonds? I mean,
Anything? Do we have? I mean, what's the total amount during this coming budget year that this budget addresses?
Yeah, I mean
that will be maturing and will need to be reinvested.
We'll give you the cash flow statements from both Janney and Ameriprise.
That's the only two funds we have, Janney and Ameriprise?
We gotta listen. Are those the only two funds that you have?
No, we have interest-bearing accounts in Bankwell, Webster, the Connecticut Stiff account, United Bank, Fairfield County Bank, but I will provide that to you. You will get the schedule.
Okay.
I mean,
okay. And who do we use to consult with in regards to treasury functions, in regards to what's the best investments to make and what's the town's best strategy for investment in these?
Well, that'll be your finance director.
Okay, do we use any outside consultants?
Yes, not consultants, but investors. Yeah, Janney would be the majority stakeholder.
Okay. Okay.
Any further questions, Jim?
Yes. In regards to this document, are we getting this document while we're on the conference call of this suggested reductions that the first select woman spoke about?
Sure.
All right.
Yes.
Okay.
Sure.
I can send you the entire package, which will have the backup. For instance, Jim, what you just asked for, all our investments. I'm going to flip it to Jim Brown, and Jim, can you flip it to all members of your board?
Sure.
Okay, I'm going to do that right now. It'll take me about 30 seconds.
Okay. But the list that the first select woman gave us read tonight of the projected savings to try to make up the gap in the $1 million loss in investment income.
Yeah, that will be.
That she quickly went over.
Yep.
Is there a reason that wasn't supplied to us before the meeting began? Because we're usually used to stuff like that being presented to us so that we had it, so we could look at it.
First select woman's choice.
I just
We were working
finished
on
it right before the meeting, Jim. I was dealing with coronavirus all day.
All right. In the future, if you could try to on any of this stuff, and if the
Oh, absolutely, but obviously these are different
can you get
times
us
now.
any materials?
Yep.
Anything that's going to be presented to us, if we could have it in advance.
Yes, the answer is yes, Mr. Walsh. So for documents that we're going to be looking at the day of the meeting, if we can have it at least the day of, the morning of, preferably the day before.
Okay.
Okay.
It'd be nice to have it by like 3 or 4 o'clock, so we'd have a chance to review it in advance of the meeting. Might quick enough.
Again, I understand, Mr. Walsh, but we did have a serious situation today, and so obviously we're in, uncharted waters, but we have gotten every bit of information, and of course, you're not taking any votes on this tonight, and you'll have more than enough time to look at it before any votes are taken.
I understand, but I'm just trying to, usually we get it. I just wanted to make a point of it.
Yeah,
I'd like to try to get it.
times are unusual, though.
You got it.
Okay.
Yep, no, I understand. I got people in my office right now. Times are unusual. I understand that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Do I still have the floor for questioning?
Well, just before, I just want to see if there's any other questions on investment income before Mr. Walsh takes us off.
Yes.
That subject. Mr. DeWitt, or investment income, or what the, selectmen's adjustments were? Okay, so, Mr. DeWitt.
Yes, Chris DeWitt. Yeah. Chris DeWitt speaking. So, I appreciate the administration's, giving us a heads up on this, right? I'm beginning to feel like we might be defaulting a little too much. Because we're talking about, 0.02%, right, which is today. This budget goes into effect in July, and let's hope it's still not 0.025 in July. So I'm just curious of your thoughts. Is that really, and you and I spoke about this, is this a real $1 million swing we're talking about, or is it? I mean, I get it. This is crystal ball stuff, right? But I feel like I just want to be. I'm glad you're being a little pessimistic, but are we too pessimistic, right?
Well, I mean, I'm
Make any sense here?
This is Tom Bremer again. I guess you're right. We may be a bit conservative on this. I can't put this all on coronavirus. I'm sure, although obviously that has that is a large factor. That's not the only factor. And it was just, we just got nervous, I guess, as we were getting closer and closer to the end, that we thought that the more conservative way to approach it is to, okay, if we need to cut the interest income, we'll cut $1 million out. But you're quite correct. I mean, I can easily see 6 months from now, assuming things turn around and that sort of thing, it may not be $1 million short. It may only be 400,000 or 500,000 short. But
right.
In fairness, I think it was something that, as you just said, it's a crystal ball, and we're trying to read it as best we can, given the circumstances we're in today.
Right. So just so we're clear, the budget we're executing right now, the interest income is about 2.1 million. Is that right, Ms. Bossy?
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
And we're gonna hit that more than likely, right?
Yeah.
What was 2019? It was higher, was it not? I know the 3-year average.
2019 was, I think it was 2.9, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was 2.9.
It was 2.9. It was very high.
With mark to market.
Yeah, right. So, I mean, this number's not unprecedented, I guess, is where I'm going, right? So
That's correct.
I'm just trying to bring I understand Mr. Walsh's point, and I understand the administration's point. I just want to bookend that a little bit by saying, not be too horribly conservative.
Well, we're not going to hell in a handbasket, in other words. I understand. And I agree with that.
Mrs.
Okay,
Gardner?
thank you.
Mrs. Gardner, you had something to add?
This is just the perfect storm. I just want to caution you of one thing. We have a positive mark-to-market of 316, and as you know, as interest rates rise, that'll become a negative, and we're not even addressing that today.
Yeah,
We're
okay.
trying to compensate for all in one line rather than break it up in
Right,
little
and-
bits and pieces.
Okay.
So I just caution you, you're right.
Yep.
The investment income may,
Chris DeWitt's not gonna change this number, believe me. I'm just asking if we're being a little too conservative.
Okay, thank you, Mr. DeWitt. Any other questions on investment income before I turn it back to Mr. Walsh? Seeing none. Jim, back to you.
Well, I have one, but I know you were coming back to me, so.
Coming back to you. Go ahead.
Yeah, to Mr. Bremer or anybody, Ms. Gardner, Ms. Bossy, I guess the question is out of the $1 million change in the investment income line, how much is related to, what do you think the total amount is related to the coronavirus?
We don't know. We
Yeah.
don't know.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's
Could you,
impossible.
do some type of, what?
That's kind of impossible to estimate.
Why?
Why?
I mean, Miss Gardner went through it, and she said that a lot of it had to do with the coronavirus because of changes in what the Fed did. So those parts should be able to be, in regards to your estimates, you should be able to calculate that, at least what your estimate is for that.
I don't know.
Any,
I'm not so sure we can. We've got 2 cuts in the federal rates.
Yep.
So I'm sure that has an impact. I don't know if you can put such a fine edge on it. And as
A fine edge of why, of how much the $1 million is?
yeah, I mean, you're trying to. I don't think it's doable. I just don't think it's doable. To say X amount is for the coronavirus and X amount is for sluggish growth in the economy. X amount is for what if Trump wins, what if Trump loses? I mean, that's all gonna affect the markets next year. And as we've been talking about, we're gazing into the crystal ball. And so my attitude is, all right, maybe we're being overly conservative, maybe we're not. Again, let me go back to what we talked about a little bit earlier. Last year we were at 2.9 million, and this year, this number of 2.7 million just seems to me to be very aggressive, given the facts as we're dealing with them today. How much of that $1 million is related to X, Y, or Z? I don't know if we can sit here and try to calculate it. I mean, I guess we could, but I don't think there's any value in that, frankly, because we're really out on the crystal ball.
Okay, can I ask you a question now, follow that up with, if I take the 2.7 million, which you had at a certain point, and divide it by the $48 million you said you had invested, that's a return of 5.6% on bonds, primarily bond interest. And that's significantly above what the Treasury bills, even at their highest, was by 3.5%.
Well, you're
Can you tell me how you got to 5.6% return on bonds?
Well, it's not just on bonds, and as I just mentioned, in last year we had 2.9. That wasn't just on bonds either. We don't invest solely in bonds. We have other investments as well.
Okay, so it's bonds and dividends.
We've sent you the entire schedule, and you'll be able to see where all the investments are. And I think that'll answer your question.
So it was bonds and dividends, bond interest and dividends, is that correct?
I think on your schedule C3, you'll see T-bills, you'll see bonds, you'll see other investments as well.
And the return that we were expecting was 5.6%?
Not on bonds.
But dividend interest?
Jim, on that 48 million, we were expecting to receive 720,000. It's on the schedule. Did you?
I did.
It's hard for me to go to see my emails right now because I'm watching a presentation on my computer.
So maybe we can discuss it then after you've had a chance to review it at the next Board of Finance meeting. Again, it doesn't have to be decided this evening, and you could always have these questions answered again at another meeting, or you can follow it up later with an email after you've had a chance to read it.
Yeah, I'll take a look at it. It just seemed odd that the 2.7 million equals 5.62% on the total investment of $48 million. This seems like a high amount.
That would be a very high amount, and I think the
It would be
schedule,
extremely high amount.
yeah, and I think the schedule will answer that question.
Okay, so we'll take it up the next meeting, maybe, Mr. Brown, or whenever you decide to put it back on, and we'll have a full discussion about it.
Absolutely, yep, we will make sure we do that. If not, the next meeting's with the Board of Ed, so we'll perhaps take a look at it on Thursday.
And again, you know, we're in a difficult situation here with these telemeetings and, you know, the pending, situation with, COVID virus. So it might be productive if you read it and then forwarded any questions to the finance department, and then they could be answered for you that way as well.
Okay. So, Mr. Brown, are we taking it up at the next meeting?
Yes, and next, we'll take it up on Thursday,
Thursday? Okay.
yes.
All right.
All right, thank you, Mr. Walker.
And Jim, if there's any questions you have after you look at the schedule and you need more information, we'll be happy to provide it.
Okay. I just thought that I mean, I'll talk to you off the line, Mr. Bremer, but I thought the number that we had invested, or we normally invested, was in the $60 million range. So the $48 million number is quite surprising to me, because I don't think that we lost, you know, a little under $20 million.
Yeah, and
But we can talk about that offline. And
that's
I'll
fine.
take a look at what you sent me, since I don't have the ability to access it, because I'm afraid to touch this computer other than watching this meeting.
I understand.
Okay,
Perfect.
all right, thank you.
Um,
Mr. Walsh?
do I still have the file? Yes. The other question I have is there a page in this book, in this budget book, that says what the total number of new hires is and how much the town, I know that because the Board of Ed provides us that, what the total number of, like, new employees would be? I mean, I think in the Board of Ed book, it's called FTEs, but I don't know if I see a page in here, but maybe I've missed it.
Page 304, 305.
Page 304, 305.
304, 305.
Look at you.
I don't have a page 304 or 305.
It's all the way in the back in supporting documentation.
Wait a minute. Nope. Yep. Sorry. It was right behind that last tab. Okay. So we are having a change of adding 11 employees in this budget.
Yes,
How's that?
seven of those are ECC employees, which are being paid for, by Westport. So we're really
Okay,
only
so
adding
7 of them. You're adding 4, and we'll talk about the ECC when we get there, I guess, and we'll talk about that.
Okay.
All right. Yep. And all right. And what's the total expense increase on the budget for both DOE increase versus town increase in expenses, not tax, not supposed taxes?
Yeah, so if you go in back in the beginning of the book.
Yeah, it's there.
These are the expense increases. In general, I believe.
Page 3.
You're looking at page 3, Jim?
I've got page 3 in front of me now, hearing you mention it.
So, and what was the question? David?
So the Board of Ed increase is 3.6. What?
No,
Go ahead, Tom. I'm sorry to interrupt you.
Board of Ed is 5.6 million, town is 4.8 million. As a,
How about in percentages?
well, percentage, they have a 3.13% of their budget, which is much larger than ours, and we have a 3.69% of our budget.
Okay. And did that change after the fact of the reductions and changes by the Board of Selectmen?
Yeah, it's in the errata.
Yes, I'm sure it does.
That, hang on one second. We sent that to you earlier in the week, and it's online, and I sent it to you today. Did you get it, Chris?
I did, but I only downloaded
We did
the-
change, we did post it online and we did send it out. Linda's nudging me.
Okay, and what is that number?
It's right here.
No, he means after Board of Selectmen.
Oh, that's.
Linda's looking it up, Jim.
Thank you.
Okay,
Thanks, Linda.
okay. The Board of Ed increase remains at 3.13.
Board of Ed is 313,
The town is 3.6.
3.60 for the town.
Emergency communication
Right.
remains the same, and the total budget increase is 3.47.
Total budget increase is 347.
0.47 on an expense basis. Great.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
3.6.
Mr. Walsh, anything else right now?
That's it for right now. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Turning it over to the board for further questions. Mr. Mottola, your hand is up.
It's hard to see, isn't it?
Thank you. Can you, and you can hear me, I hope?
Yep.
We can hear you.
Okay. Hey, on your presentation, Ms. Kupchak, on page 14, can you just, where you have, for example, some of these new items that you want to move forward on, the online permitting software,
Mm-hmm.
you see where I am?
Yes,
The automated time and attendance, workforce management, the AV equipment, and the new parking app for residents. Is there a specific location in the budget book that lists all these and what the cost is? I know it's there somewhere, but is there like one particular page that does it, or is it
under a Board of
throughout the
Selectmen,
entire
isn't
book
it?
under various
Linda?
departments?
The Board of Selectmen, woman.
All over the place.
Yeah, well, yeah, I'll tell you, going through this budget process, I told these guys next year, we have to make this easier these budget books are
Well, let's
the way they're set up, but
You don't, I don't want to spend a lot of time in this. If you want to like look at it and maybe shoot us an email to Mr. Brown where these are located in the budget book instead of going through it right now, I'm fine with that. I just
okay,
would like to
absolute,
see
no
that.
problem at all. We're noting that now, John, and we'll get it to you.
Thank you, Jim. I'm all set.
Thank
All
you.
right, thank you, John. Anyone else from the board? Mrs. Charlton?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I guess a question to the first woman, if I could.
Yes.
So I appreciate your analysis on the interest income, and I think that's wise. Obviously, with everything that's happened in the markets, that seemed like an obvious one that jumped out at me when we were budgeting a higher amount of interest income. But can you just talk about, in general, if this is the appropriate time, since we're looking at this overall at the moment, there are a number of other things, given the unprecedented situation we're in, that seem like they might be affected in this budget. And I'm just wanted to get your thoughts on if you had considered any of the other broad revenue line items. So, for example, tax collection rates, building permit revenue, given that we're sort of in a lockdown in this country, and we're, given that we're, most economists now are predicting, I think, a 10% contraction in Q2, which is worse than any quarter we had in 2008 from a recession perspective. So that's, those are pretty alarming numbers. And as I sit here and look at this kind of top down, a month ago, this all would have sounded great. So obviously, I'm not trying to be critical of anything because, a lot of things have changed under all of our feet in the last weeks. But, does some of this just from a high level seems like it may need to be revisited or may not make a lot of sense given the environment that we're in outside of interest income. So just from a revenue perspective, is that something that you expect us to discuss as we go through this process, or what are your thoughts in terms of this from a big picture perspective?
Well, obviously I think that this is going to impact this current year's budget that we're in right now, the things that are happening right now. And, I mean, honestly, Lori, this is a whole new world, and I'm assuming regardless of how we move forward, we pass a budget, and we're going to have to make adjustments down the line as conditions change. But right now, we have a budget that we are dealing with, the last year's budget, and I think the stuff that's happening to us right now is impacting that budget. So if you look at anything else, we're going to have to make changes based on last year's budget about stuff that's happening right now. And again, we're going to have to make changes to probably next year's budget after it's passed. I mean, it's part of life. Things are happening here. Just like we were impacted by Sandy, you know, we got through it. We figured it out. You're right. I put this budget together, and I didn't know anything about COVID at the time. I think we kind of have to have a little bit of faith too, that we're going to have to figure these things out as we move along.
And Lori, so you know, with each revenue line item belongs to a particular department, we'll have the opportunity to ask the department head to review the line items, the revenue line items, and ask those questions.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And again, I know some of this is guesswork at this point, but I just think about what's going on from a business perspective. You know, everyone's looking at this right now. And as much as we don't know what's going to happen tomorrow, we do need to make some assumptions. I don't think anybody believes that this is going to be a short-term economic impact that only affects the next few months. And part of I think the imperative to look at some of these things in advance is that, you know, when things do change, there are obviously some levers you can pull, but they can't always be pulled immediately. And so, you know, that can become problematic. I mean, if we have a 10% contraction, if we have a recession that goes through the end of the year, I mean, we are talking a lot of job losses and, you know, potentially home foreclosures. I mean, there's all kinds of things that you know, can happen. No one understands right now, and I do appreciate that, but I feel like a conservative, as much as invest, you know, a vision of investing in the town is I think what we'd all like to do right now. What keeps coming to mind to me is a more conservative scenario that contemplates a lot of unknowns and contemplates, to your point, to the first select woman's point, the fact that the budget projections for this year, we don't know what those are right now, right? We may be dipping into surplus in a way that we hadn't anticipated for fiscal 2020. And so that has implications as well. So, I mean, yes, I guess the answer is we'll just go through it line item by line item, but I was just trying to understand whether there was a view of the administration of any, you know, bigger picture items outside of investment income that had been contemplated at this point. So.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Charlton.
Well, I would also just comment that I don't know if you were on the board, Jim, when we went through the recession?
Yeah.
Statewide
Just started.
recession?
Yes. 2008,
So I think maybe your
2010. And
right. Okay, there you go. Maybe your experience will help to guide us through, because obviously we're in uncharted waters here, and we're all every town in the state is dealing with this. Every town in this country, and outside of our country, are dealing with having to pass budgets in an unstable environment. But I would say that I think we should, you know, obviously be cautious, but I think we still need to do the town's business, and we need to move our town. We need to take care of our town, and we need to provide services for our community.
Thank you. Mrs. Gardner?
Just follow up on, if you don't mind, on Brenda's point.
Mr. DeWitt?
So, you know, in 2008, we were worried about the collection rate. And, you know, I know Lori brought this up, and I spoke to Lori about this earlier in the week. But our collection rate didn't fall off a whole lot. Now, Lori's point when we talked earlier in the week was that was a little more prolonged thing. This is like, hitting a brick wall. But yeah, collection rate, I mean, I don't know what you're calculating for, collection rate at this year. I forget what the number is in here. But,
It's 9883.
9883. So that's, I mean,
Well, you have the opportunity to change the
Yeah,
collection
yeah.
rate too at the
yeah,
very end.
absolutely.
so-
Yeah, right. Something we should probably look at one if we think. Well, we'll see.
Yeah, I think those experiences can obviously be helpful, and obviously I was not on the board, and many of you have been through this with the town before, but this is not just a recession as we're seeing. You know, a recession, we have a slowdown in economic activity, but we don't have schools closed and businesses closed and people, isolated in their homes and the state of emergency in all our communities. So this is a very different scenario, I would just say, than anything we've ever been through in our lifetime. It feels, it just feels to me like it warrants a top-down look at the big picture. And I understand that there's a way to do that as we go through the process. So I'll leave it alone for now, but I just wanted to, again, see if there were any other broad items that the administration had in mind. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Any other questions from the board? Seeing none. John, I'm thinking your hand's up from last time, but I don't want to miss you there.
It is, sorry.
Okay, not a problem. Okay, seeing none, Mrs. Kupchak, thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Mr. Bremer?
And, again.
Now we got to beat you up in your budget.
Yeah.
No.
I mean, this is just the,
But let me just say that, I really want to say how much I appreciate everybody's patience, through this. This has been, a whole new world for me, and, teletown meetings and trying to make sure that we're doing the people's business in a very bizarre environment. It has been a challenge to say the very least. But I really appreciate your willingness to be flexible and try to do our town business for our residents. And I just want to thank you, and I want to offer myself and anyone in my administration that's available to you anytime you want to call, email with any questions at all. We are more than happy to get you whatever you need, or even just talk some things through if you want to ask a specific question or just want to find out our perspective on anything.
thank you very much.
Thank you so much. And remember, everybody, wash your hands.
Jim?
Sing happy birthday twice.
Are there any other comments from the
Jim, can I just make one real quick?
Mr. Testani?
I just want to kind of echo what the first selectwoman is saying. We've all speculated on our private and personal lives, and in the corporate world that I live in addition to my personal life, like many others, I've been forced to work remotely. The one thing that my company has sort of encouraged is continued business development, which is the role I play and have played for close to 20 years in the company I'm in. So the point I'm making with that is part of the focus of at least certainly the first selectwoman's budget is to try to, number one, keep business as much as we can on a road as usual. One, two, to try to keep the town of Fairfield and its business going as usual. So having said that, I think a lot of her ideas, to get to Ms. Charlton's point, from a top-down perspective about trying to promote the town, trying to increase its business awareness, and if possible, create new business opportunities, and even in an environment like this, can only be beneficial once this COVID-19 hopefully gets through our system, so to speak, over the course of the next couple of months. That's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Testani. Any other comments from the board? Not so much questions, but comments. Mr. Walsh?
These are interesting times. I'm not going to say that we are in interesting times, clearly, as everyone has mentioned. And in regards to the budget as we go through it, I think we're going to have to find ways to save money for the taxpayer. I mean, there are people who are hurting now and who are going to continue to hurt as the governor's orders go into place. And I mean, we don't know where this is going. I mean, in Philadelphia, they've closed down all non-essential businesses. Everyone is home. No work is getting done, except if it's getting done at home. I think Mr. Brown, you and I had a chat about that today. You have clients dealing with a law firm down there. Everyone at 5 p.m. had to be home. And basically, they're being sheltered in place. So we don't know where this is going, but already with the governor's actions today, closing certain sectors, certain businesses in our economy, some of them have direct effect on our taxpayers who will not be making money. So, you know, as we go through, I think everyone's going to have some effect from this COVID-19 economically. And I think we're going to have to work towards keeping this budget as low as possible. And, you know, the town being at a 3.69%, you know, increase, or 3.60, I guess it got reduced. We're really gonna have to tighten our belts here. So, you know, I'm gonna be trying to do that as I go through the budget.
And I just want to interject that during our conference call with the governor, our emergency operations team at 5 o'clock, with all the other state leaders, the governor talked extensively about SBA loans, changing in taxes, and a whole host of different things, extending unemployment insurance, whole host of things to try to help out people, because obviously he's understanding that everyone in the state is dealing with this. So there are some things coming out of our state government that are going to step up to help people, as well as things are happening. Oh, they just signed the SBA loan this afternoon program with the federal government. And the feds are doing a lot too. So hopefully those things will be helpful to our community and to us as well.
No, thank you.
Ms. Guthrie, do you know when they changed that, whether they changed the qualification process? Because most people I know in businesses that I've worked with can't qualify because they look at all the members of an LLC's personal financial statement, and they want you to borrow from that first before they'll give you an SBA loan.
Well, I don't know. I don't know exactly what they changed. I know they made a declaration this afternoon, but I'm happy to get that information to you tomorrow, Jim, if that's helpful.
Yeah, that'd be great, because if they don't change the qualification process, most businesses in this town are not going to be able to qualify. That's the problem. They can't qualify.
I understand, and we asked some questions that Mark Barnhart had put through for businesses who are reaching out to him. But the governor said he's going to send more detailed, he said express detail on all these different things, especially the economic pieces. So once I get those, I'm happy to forward them to you.
All right. Do you know whether the governor, after his declaration, I mean, he closed businesses today, but he didn't seem to match it with trying to find income for those people who he's not going to allow to work, such as waiters and waitresses. There's no reimbursement whatsoever for any of them. These people will start starving in 2 weeks.
Well, there is expanded unemployment is what he was talking about today.
What does that mean exactly?
I can share that again. I'm not the governor. I'm just sharing what he said he was doing. Like expanding the criteria, relaxing the standards and things of that nature for people to be able to apply.
Maybe not having the wait time.
Correct.
Okay.
But I'm happy to share that with all of you, and the governor's obviously sharing it, will be sharing it with the public as well.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Walsh, any further comment?
No, that's it. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
All right, thank you very much.
Okay.
Oh, we still have your actual budget.
You're doing that now?
First look, yeah.
That comes up Yes,
Now?
yes. It comes up after this. So we're on item number 4, if you're following the agenda, which is discussion of the following budgets. And the first item is we just need mute, thank you. The miscellaneous not-for-profit organizations, we have relieved them from coming here tonight or even calling in. Most of them,
After nonprofit.
most of them are either at a 0% increase or actually a little bit less than last year. So, does anyone have, I do have their phone numbers, if anyone has any questions for the not-for-profits. I'm seeing no questions for the not-for-profits. Okay, so then we're moving on, the next item is the first select woman's budget, and that is on page 45. If you have your budget books in front of you, you can go to page 45 and page 46 and page 47. Okay, so call on Mrs. Kupchak or Mr. Bremer or whoever, if you're gonna present this combined, but
Well, I thought the slideshow was kind of my presentation.
okay, so what we'll do, just go down the, yeah, so we had the overview, and now if we go to page 46, we had the details, right, of the costs. We have regular payroll, part-time payroll, okay, bonus, so have you, so. Small presentation, or we've done that, and I'll just turn it over to the board?
I think just question.
Okay. So if the board has the books in front of them, right, we're on page 45, 46, are there any questions on the first select Ms. budget? Mr. Walsh?
Your 26% increase in your total budget seems to be, the majority of it is regular payroll, and that's from the changes by adding the chief administrative officer, making the chief of staff full-time, and then deducting from that the chief of staff part-time position. Correct?
Yeah.
That's correct.
So that was only approved a couple of months ago. Can you discuss how that is all working out?
I can't imagine what I'd do without them. Honestly, Jim, you know, those slide decks that I showed the Board of Finance when I asked for the transfer, included other towns. And literally, we were like the only town who didn't have a fully staffed front office. All these other towns have so much more staff. I mean, responding to a constituency of over 60,000 people and a very engaged and active community who want answers to their questions. And let me tell you something, they ask a lot, a lot, hundreds of questions a day. And simply, you just cannot be responsive to the community and also move your community forward and manage a pretty large town, which I would say is a small city, with a half-time person in the front office. It's just, 2 half-time, well, it's just, to me, I couldn't have done, I just can't do it productively, I think, I would say. So obviously dealing with the fill pile, dealing just with managing, departments and trying to really create efficiencies, that takes honest sitting down work. It's not something you just can do in a couple hours. It's a lot of repeated effort and work to find efficiencies, modernize your town government, and be responsive to the people who expect their town government to respond to them. So I think it's been professional and in the way it should be.
And I would
Okay, well,
also,
that's good to hear. Okay, go, Mr. Bremer.
no, I was also gonna say, I know that percentage looks large, but we also eliminated a position in animal control, which is down on something like 17%. So, you know, I'd like to think that it was a brilliant decision on Brenda's behalf to hire me, but I hope we are bringing some value to the town.
Yeah, brilliant decision to hire him.
Mr. Wal-
Well, I would actually agree with that. I think it was a brilliant decision to hire Mr. Bremer as well.
Well, thank you.
And obviously, cutting the position definitely helped, you know, shore up that number a bit. And obviously with some of the issues that you're having to deal with the fill pile, and now with the coronavirus situation, it's probably turned out to be fortuitous that we went in that direction. So I'm gonna, unless anybody else had any questions in this area, I'm gonna move on to the next question I have, Mr. Brown, but I'll leave that up to you.
Okay, before we move on, are there any other thoughts or comments on the regular payroll? Mr. Mottola, is your hand raised for this, line item? You're
I
on.
think it's related to it.
Is it related to it? Yeah, right now, we'll take questions on the regular payroll, then I'll turn it back to Mr. Walsh. So if your question pertains to regular payroll, please go ahead.
Yeah, so on page 45, which is your budget summary, you said the offsets to the staffing increase appear in other budgets. And are those the things we discussed a few months ago, or is there something else?
No, those are the exact things that we talked about, during the budget transfer meeting.
Okay.
It's the same.
All right. They're directly related to that, they're not related to any cut that you made to the Board of Ed to?
Oh, absolutely not. No.
Okay. All right. So it's what we discussed 2 or 3 months ago.
Yes.
That's correct.
Okay.
Remember when I made the presentation, to the Board of Finance, I said if this was actual budget changes that could carry forward, that weren't like one-time gimmicks. And so that's why we did it that way, right?
All right, thank you, Mr. Mottola.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Testani, related to the payroll?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to ask, I watched the Board of Selectmen meeting. Am I right to say, even with the email, that this corresponds to what was discussed at the Board of Selectmen meeting, which, by the way, looked to me to be very bipartisan, looked to be very supportive of all the changes you made, First Selectwoman. So am I right to say that all the changes, especially as it pertains to payroll, were approved as requested?
Well, yes. I mean, yes, absolutely. Both Selectwoman Nancy Lefkowitz and Selectman Flynn were very supportive of my budget and actually the entire town budget. They thought that there was some really good investments, conservative but strategic investments. Obviously, Selectwoman Lefkowitz made a public statement that she supported everything I was doing, but she felt that her vote as an RTM member for the teacher contract kind of made her feel obligated to not support my $600,000 reduction in the education budget. And she did state publicly that was really the only reason why she wasn't supporting it.
Right, but in terms of your payroll and from what I observed in that Board of Selectmen meeting, everyone was supportive of these changes to your payroll, number one, and in the First Selectman's office budget itself as presented, correct? I don't think there were any changes.
No, none.
Right. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you.
Testani. Mrs. Charlton?
I gotta unmute her.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I understand the head count numbers. my question is, within the budget line item, what was the amount budgeted, if any, and maybe from a percentage standpoint, for salary increases for the year?
You mean for next year?
Yes, for fiscal 21, yeah.
We don't,
Well, we don't typically, discuss salary increases or assumptions because that's a personnel issue.
Mrs. Gardner?
Contract.
In the budget book, there is no estimate for an increase. If you look between the approved budget and the request budget, you'll see little numbers in parentheses. That's the year upon which the salary is based upon. Any wage reserve to bring those people up to 21 is carried in contingency, and we discussed that only in executive session.
Got it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Charlton. Any other questions on regular payroll? Okay, Mr. Walsh.
Okay, my next question in the first selectman's woman's budget is, the secretarial services, and it's not a lot of dollars, but it is a percentage of 16.67%, and I know the first select woman hasn't been to our board before, but we normally ask about increases because the taxpayers generally want to know when they watch these meetings why there are, larger than normal increases in certain lines. So while it's not a lot of money, if you could just tell us what the reason is for your increase in secretarial service costs in your budget. 16.67%.
These are for people taking minutes.
Yeah, why is the increase? Are you increasing their salaries or their pay, their
For
their
20
hourly rate?
Jim, it's for 28 meetings.
yeah, there were more meetings this,
There was more meetings.
right.
Oh, there's more Board of Selectmen meetings
Yes.
for this year, correct? Are you presuming that there's going to be an equally large number of meetings starting in July 1st to the July 1st until June 30th of 2021?
Yes, we
Yes.
are.
Okay. All right. And is that because of the fill pile and things like that?
Yes, it is.
Okay, thank you. If we go down to the communications line, it goes up 445% from $550 last year to $3,000. What is the reason for that increase?
That is 3 telephones and a cable line.
3 telephones for who?
For where?
Cell phone.
Cell phone.
cell
So Mike used to have part of his, I think Mike had a town phone when he was here. I get a stipend toward my phone. I didn't want a separate phone because I don't want more than one phone. And a phone for Tom and a stipend for Jackie for her phone. She didn't want 2 phones either. And I had a cable line put in my office to have the news on.
Oh, so that's for cable vision service?
Correct.
Okay. And that's never existed before in the first selectman's office?
There was no cable in the whole building. I couldn't believe it actually, but not even basic, nothing.
Right.
0.
Okay. Printing, binding, and photography, the next line goes up by $1,000, so it goes up 100%. What is the reasoning for that?
I wanted to have nicer stationery for our proclamations in town. They were currently just using what I believed was not something up to the standard of this town. To give someone a proclamation for their 100th birthday or some, important event. So I upped the cost for the weight of the paper, have a little nicer weight of paper, and stationery to be able to send sympathy cards and things of that nature from the first select woman to residents in our community.
office supply line goes up by $1,000, an increase of 40%. What is that
I put a
line
water,
increase for?
I put a water cooler, in the office. I guess it was cut a few years ago. And I had a water cooler installed. And what else did we put in there? I think it was also that some basic stationery for our everyday letters that go out. The paper literally was I think it was the cheapest paper I've ever seen in my entire life. I couldn't believe how bad it was. I mean, and the whole entire supplies to the first select woman's office was depleted. I mean, there was like the worst supplies ever. There was like 5 pens. I mean, I don't know what was going on here, but there was no supplies. And I'm trying to run a professional office, so I upped it a little.
Okay. Are there water coolers in every single office in Town Hall?
I don't think so, but there's certainly one of mine. And we have 6 people.
All right.
2 greeters, and Jen and Jackie and Tom and me and all the people that come in and out of our office all day long for meetings and things.
Linda, can you get us the total bill for water coolers and water for the town hall?
Sure.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Great. All right. The next increase I'd like to talk about is on travel and meetings. It's gone from $10,000 in last year's budget to $12,000 in this year's budget, an increase of $2,000 or 20% increase.
Right. So I guess we used to have so there's always a $500 a month stipend, I guess, for mileage. That's for meetings. I added some because I want to go to. We added 2 additional meetings for the U.S. Conference of Mayors and the National League of Cities and Conferences. Being newly elected, I thought that those 2 conferences, going at least to one of each of those, would be highly beneficial to me as a leader of this town, and to be able to have some knowledge and information as a newly elected first select person. So I kept those in. I added those 2 conferences. I didn't get to go. I didn't get to go this year because I had, when I got elected, we had the fill pile and all of that. So I'm hoping to go for next year to those conferences. It's not unusual. Mike must have went when he was first elected, and other mayors and stuff go.
Actually, no, he might have gone one time. We cut that out of the Board of Finance has cut that routinely every year. Last number of years. We just didn't see the need of it, and it also takes you away from the town, to position away from the town, and you never know when an emergency might happen. So we routinely cut those conferences over the last number of years with Mr. Tetro, and I even think at the end of Mr. Flato's term. So it's going to be kind of tough to justify at this point in time.
Well, I think it's highly important to have someone have knowledge and information to be able to run a town more efficiently. And I would hope that the Board of Finance would afford me that ability to learn so that I could produce for our community. To me, it would be penny wise and pound foolish to cut something like that. There really is no value on education issues to help our community. And I've never run a town before, and I think I would be very valuable to me.
Are you saying that you'd only go to it for this 1 year and then not go to it in future years?
I'm saying I would like to go this year and see how valuable it is. And if I think it's really valuable and that there's going to be new things each and every year, I'll come back and put it in the budget and ask for it.
Okay.
But I've never been, so I really wouldn't know.
That's fine. I'm just trying to stay consistent with what we've been doing on this board.
Well, you can always change, you know. You can always change.
Mrs. Gardner?
Yeah, I know, but we got to rein in spending, and that's part of the problem with some of these things. Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, for your benefit and the benefit for all your members on the Board of Finance, in case you weren't aware, although I did send out a link to everybody, what we call the text report was uploaded to the town's website. The text report gives you every department and an explanation of the lines similar to what you just went through with the first select woman. So, Mr. Walsh, all those meetings and the cost of those meetings were outlined in the text report. It is on the website. In addition, there is the revised budget to the budget request increase, which shows that the first select woman's budget was really less than a 6% increase. For purposes of setting the tax rate, you have to go from original budget to original budget. And during the course of the year, you did make transfers into her budget for the chief of staff and the chief administrative officer. So really, the swing between the revised budget and her request is not as large as in the budget book. Okay, and the last thing I want...
Okay, go ahead.
And there are two other reports on there as well, and they're well marked and they're well explained. The year-to-date revenue report, I think that was as of 3/13, and the year-to-date expenditure report, which is also, I think, as of 3/13. I tried to give that to you as recent as possible.
Thank you.
Okay, that might help all of you.
No, I appreciate that, Ms. Gardner, and, you know, there's a lot of stuff that you guys supply, and I appreciate it, but I do, and I think the rest of my colleagues reserve the right to ask the department head about any of these expenses. So I appreciate you pointing out where the knowledge is, but we still have a right to ask the question.
Of course.
Absolutely.
Excellent, thank you. That's all I have in regards to the first select.
All right,
And
thank you, Mr. Walsh. Mrs. Charlton, you have a question?
Yes, just one quick question. There's no increase from the prior year, but the line item educational and memberships, what's actually included in there?
CCM.
38
CCM.
CCM?
Yeah, you have to pay to be a member.
Okay, and that's all of it?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Charlton, that benefits not only the first selectman's office, it also is CCM membership for if we wanted to go to CCM or the RTM and ask them to get us information.
And
Understood, yeah, I just didn't.
our RTM uses them quite a bit.
Yeah.
That's great. That's awesome. That's great.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to understand if there was anything else in there, any other, you know, seminars or anything, but I get it. Thank you for that.
Thank you. Mr. Testani? Jack, is that up there from last time?
Yeah, sorry.
Okay, no problem. I'm not seeing any other questions for the first select woman's budget. Okay, moving on. Thank you.
Thank you. We got a busy day tomorrow.
We do.
Oh.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
We're moving on to the town clerk's budget. Mrs. Brown is
You're up,
here.
Mrs.
Ms.
Brown.
Brown.
Keep my department heads up too late, you know.
We'll go to page...
Planning to, be in a COVID environment.
Oh, yeah.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Page 48. Oh, I'll turn it over to you. Any comments for the board?
Everything's status quo, basically. The increase in regular payroll is due to the contract settlements. The longevity bonus, that went up because of your employees. I tried to cut where possible. My rental and storage fee went down. And I also decreased postage a little bit. We're doing more e-recording, electronic recordings of mortgages, releases, things of that nature. And the postage went down because of that. But we still have to keep a lot in there because it's a presidential election year.
Mm-hmm.
That's basically it.
All right, thank you. Any questions on the expenses for Betsy? Mr. Testani?
My hand's still up, sorry. No, I'm good.
Okay, man, let's take that hand down. I'll keep calling on you.
Sorry.
Okay, any questions on the expenses? If not, seeing none, I am seeing no questions. So we'll go to the revenue, which side, which is page 22.
Sorry, which page?
22.
22.
Sorry, yes.
Board of Selectmen increased my conveyance tax line to 1.9 million. And there were no fee increases from the state regarding any other line items. Increased a little bit with my recording fees, but as the attorneys on the board all know, it depends if it's a recording fee that goes as a MERS document or just as a regular recording fee, which we get more of the money.
Mr. DeWitt.
Hello, Ms. Brown, Miller. What are we on track for conveyance taxes this year?
I believe I will exceed budget, as a matter of fact. Right
Your
now,
budget's 1845. Yeah.
we had a very large sale in January in Southport, residential sale. There are a couple of sales that we're expecting by June 30th, commercial sales. Right now, I don't know if those are going to go through, given what's going on in the world.
Yep.
But as of close of business, end of February, we're at 1.29 million.
And the Board of Selectmen bumped you up to 1.9.
Correct.
Okay.
So we quiet down, winter, but once the spring market,
Yeah.
we
And
catch up.
have we ever seen conveyance change in a reevaluation year? Is that usually a?
No, the rate stays the same. It's just the values of the property.
Well, I'm saying, yeah, because if there's dramatic changes, no, I know, I know what you mean, the value, but in a year where we've had drastic changes, and the last one was not so much, 2 ago, did we see a large swing in conveyance? Not really?
Not really.
Okay. All right, great, thank you.
Yeah, it's like the beach is the hot area, that kind of thing.
Yeah, all right. It's a percentage of a number, right?
Mr. Mottola?
Yes, thanks. Hey, did I hear Chris DeWitt correctly on this conveyance tax that the Board of Selectmen bumped you up to 1.9?
Correct.
Yes. It was
The budget book says it's
$50,000. I'm sorry?
The budget book says 1,850,000. Is that the number? Is it 1.9?
It's 1.9 now. That was the original budget.
So
All right, so that's a change. Okay.
That's a change.
in that document that Jim
Probably on
forwarded
the-
you,
We got some.
in that
we
document
got
that
some
Jim forwarded you a
pages
little
of-
while ago, it's in there.
Yeah, so,
It is, okay, thanks.
Yeah.
That's it, thank you.
was that the text report that I forwarded everybody?
That first page.
Right, okay.
Yeah, it's in there.
All right, that was the differences. Great.
Yeah.
Okay, very good, thank you. Mr. Mottola, anything else? Okay,
No.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Walsh?
Yes. Hi, Betsy. How are you?
Good, Jim, how are you?
Thanks for being here. I just wanted to just ask you quickly, the recording fees were based on your estimate of $285,000, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Do you know what they were? What would they, well, where are we stand right now with that for the year? You know?
I didn't grab that number tonight, but,
Yeah, don't worry about it. Is that projecting out to get to what was budgeted last year?
yeah.
Or will it exceed it, or it will be right on budget, you think, or approximately around there? I know it's never gonna hit it
I think
exactly.
I'll come close. The big question is whether it's a MERS document or a regular recording.
Yeah,
That's what the
Exactly.
catch-22
Okay.
is all the time.
okay, no, because I'm just looking at the three-year average of the actuals, and it's 308, which is only $15,000 more, but I was wondering how you thought it was, this year was going. So, I guess I'm fine with it. I just wanted to hear how this year's recording fees were tracking.
I could get that to you.
Okay, that'd be great.
227,000. Current.
227 right now? Okay.
Okay, thank you,
Thank you,
Mr.
Ben.
Walsh. Anything else?
Not for me.
Okay, Mr. Bateson.
Yeah, thanks, Betsy. Quick question. I just want to clarify, conveyance. You had said year-to-date, I believe you said the end of February, we're at 129.
Mm-hmm. Yep,
So
that's actually,
that,
it was 1.29. That is after last week. So, we're 2 weeks in now.
all right, so it's not 8 months, it's eight plus months activity.
Correct.
8 months and 2 weeks.
Yes.
Okay, quick thing, filing fees. Is that due, increased revenue, is that due to expected volume or increased fees?
It was an increased fee.
Increased cost. What did we go to for a typical filing?
It went from $5 to $20. Those are liquor permits.
Okay, and that's based upon your office, that's not state set by the state, that's your office?
No, it's set by the state.
Okay, I'm good, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bateson. Any other questions for Mrs. Brown? Seeing none, thank you very much. Thanks for being here. Okay, next item is FairTV. We'll go to page 51. We have Mr. Andy Jones that is calling in. Good evening, Mr. Jones.
Hello. Hi, how are you guys? Can you hear me well?
We can hear you. Can the board hear?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
good. We can hear you. So we're on page 51.
Okay, great.
Yep, and if you could just walk us through the increase, that would be appreciated.
Sure, no problem. Basically, our budget proposal this year is the result of a year-long process we've gone through to bring our budgeting, accounting, and grant application process more in line with how the town does everything. So basically, forgive me, but as you know, we have two sources of funding, the town and the Cable Advisory Council for Area 2 of Connecticut. And we have, long ago in the history of FairTV, we started doing things this way. And because of this process we just went through, we discovered it. We've basically been shooting ourselves in the foot with how we've been doing things. So we're trying to put all of our labor on the town. In the past, because we just sort of treated Jerry, our main employee, as a town thing, and we treated all of our other freelance employees as something we would use our grant money for to pay them. We, after going through this process and changing things this year, we discovered that our main grant provider has a publicly stated preference for technical requests and for equipment requests, as opposed to paying for labor. So we've been using them for labor, but they're more generous for equipment and technology. So we're trying to switch all of our labor to the town, and that accounts for our increase. We also haven't been taking advantage of the fact that, as you guys well know, if we overestimate for our labor for the year, we're fine. We just return whatever unused portion goes back to the town. What we've been doing instead, for years we've been sort of checkerboarding our town fiscal year and our grant provider fiscal year, and relying on our grant provider to pay for all our end-of-year freelance labor. And again, they prefer to award grants for technology and equipment, which is something that you all well know. We can't afford to upgrade the equipment we need already. So we hope this will give us a really good return on what we're getting from the Cable Advisory Council.
Okay. Mr. Jones, you still there?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right, thank you for your comments. We appreciate all the work that FairTV does here for us in town. So this is the original equipment that you've had since 2008?
Well, not literally everything. I think perhaps what you have in front of you might be what we used as our sort of worst example. We are currently using, without getting too technical, the thing that actually puts us out onto the air of Altice and Frontier, that equipment that puts us literally on the air is about 2 years past its lifespan. We tried to get something done about it in the budget last year, and we were told basically that we would have to wait and that perhaps it could be handled on an emergency basis if it failed. So that's just one piece of equipment, but a major, major piece of equipment that we're 2 years over on, and we're just crossing our fingers it keeps going. Without getting too complicated, we really hope that if we straighten ourselves out in this sense of having all of our labor on the town, being able to concentrate from our grant provider on equipment and technology, that if we're able to supplement that with upcoming ordinance changes we have before the RTM that will give us the ability to raise funds in different ways, we feel that we'll be able to turn a corner with funding for FairTV, and this is the start. This is the beginning. I could get more specific in particular if you'd like.
No, it's okay. No, thank you very much. Are there any questions for Mr. Jones? I am seeing none. Mr. DeWitt.
My hand's not on the screen.
Hold on, Mr. Jones. I'm ignoring the guy sitting right next to me here. Mr. DeWitt.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. Listen, I want to tell you, Jerry is a great salesman for you, because when I get here early for meetings and I say, why is the audio sound so horrible? Why can't this and that? He pitches this stuff to me. So I'm going to tell you that I think we should support this year. And like I said, we've been kind of holding the budget constant. I remember this conversation last year about hardware, and I think this is the year we need to upgrade, because I'll tell you what, now I know everyone's not seeing us right now, but a lot of people are hearing us over FairTV, and as this situation goes on more and more, I think this FairTV becomes more important. And now that everything's up on YouTube, it's a much better system. So I think we should support this increase this year.
Thank you, Mr. DeWitt. Mr. Walsh.
Hello, Mr. Jones.
Hey.
Can you hear me well?
Yes, I can.
Okay. So in addition to the $75,000, if we were to grant your budget the way it is, what other funds do you get in from cable TV?
Well, and I want to answer you exactly, but it's a very complicated history and process. Basically, long story short, we had a certain amount of money literally directly coming from cable, and that was sort of hijacked in a strange sort of a way, and I can give you the background and history, maybe you even know it already, but it was hijacked by another PEG station in the area who was given oversight over the several stations in the area in terms of financing. They took the money. It took a state legislative action to have our money continue to come to us through the Cable Advisory Council of Area 2. And, basically that money is patterned or based on what the cable companies would have given us through the other person. So I hope you're following me still. From the Cable Advisory Council, we get the money from cable. But last year, in August, the Federal Communications Commission passed a new rule about how the cable companies pay the PEG stations like us. And forgive me, PEG is Public Education and Government. This new FCC rule basically allows the cable companies to come into any town they do business in and say, oh, we had a terrible storm in Fairfield this year, and we had all these down lines and all these breaks and all these problems and issues. And, in the past, they'd have to run in after that storm, and to keep their subscribers happy, they'd have to pay whatever they had to pay to get everything fixed. Now, what they can do is they can come to Fairfield, let's say, and say, oh, well, that storm cost us $45,000 in maintenance and fixing things, so we're going to just deduct that from what we pay you every year. So technically, and this year, we haven't really seen any reflection in our area of the cable companies taking advantage of this. But you could technically say that from now on every year, depending on what the cable companies spend in an individual town, that town's contribution from the cable company is threatened every year. and that's because of this new FCC rule change.
Okay. So how much did you receive, like, the last time you received payment? What was the yearly amount you received, or how much have you received so far in this current year?
Boy, that's a good question. I can get back to you with the exact answer. I do not have that off the top of my head. I believe we were granted 30 something, 35 maybe, or 30, somewhere in the area of 30 to 35 for the whole year this year.
Okay, and what do you use those funds for?
Okay, well, as I said, we're in a system now where we use a lot of that to pay freelance labor. And that's what we're trying to get away from, because it's so fluctuating, and because we found out that our grant provider has a stated preference for technological and equipment grants. Sorry, go ahead.
So when I see your proposed budget and I see the manager fee will be paid from our $75,000, the freelance labor will be paid $18,000. Is there more freelance labor other than the 18 I'm seeing here that's being paid for by cable? So all the money that you're going to be getting from Cablevision or Optimum, whatever it is, will be being used for equipment?
Yes.
Since that's their stated preference, as you stated?
That's correct. Yeah. It's sort of embarrassing. This is something they publicly made available for years, and we just didn't know.
Yeah. So in addition to this web stream for $33.50, you'll be getting another $30-something thousand you expect next year.
Well, again, I would say that hopefully we would do at least as well as this year. But again, because we hope next year to pattern our requests for technology, we hope we would do even better than this year, better than 30,000.
Okay, so but you plan on spending all of that on technology things?
Correct.
Okay, without getting into what you plan on purchasing, like, are we going to be seeing any improvements in FairTV with that money for next budget year? Better quality, like high definition, or things like that we as lay people might know and look to expect.
The high definition is something that we're pretty far away from, because it takes upgrades in concert with Optimum that they are probably not going to want to spend the money on, frankly. But yes, in terms of other things, I would think we're always aware of everyone's unhappiness with our audio issues. We are working with the two companies, the cable companies, because we think a lot of the times it's their negligence on our audio issues, in the sense that it goes out to everyone that way. But
you're talking about hearing the bleeding over of the voices and the music and stuff like that? Is that what you're talking about?
Exactly. We're always negotiating with them. We're relatively certain it's coming from them, but getting them to admit it is another issue. But we do have audio issues with certain rooms and places, and equipment would undoubtedly help us with that.
Do you plan on expanding the number of buildings you could do live broadcasts from, or anything you would provide that would explain to us how you're going to spend this $35,000 without getting into, I'm going to buy XYZ camera or whatever?
Right, I understand. I mean, we want to expand. We want to expand everything we're doing for Fairfield and for FairTV. In terms of our ability, as you said, to do live broadcasts. Can we do live broadcasts from outdoor locations? Can we do live broadcasts? We basically have the equipment we need to just get by. So we want to add the ability to do different kinds of programming, and to do that, we would need different equipment.
Okay. Do you plan on expanding the services you're giving in regards to covering additional town meetings that you're currently not covering now?
Yes, we hope to. And, there's a main set of hearings, the basic hearings that we are responsible for covering no matter what. We will never jeopardize or move away from doing them. But we have increasing interest from the public on doing lots of other hearings. Particularly anything environmental seems to be of great interest to everyone. So, as you know, this has been a terrible year for extra special meetings, and it killed our budget. But we so far have managed to take care of all of those meetings. Again, this is something we used this year. Education grant from CAC, the Cable Advisory Council, was not being used as much because they weren't having extra and special meetings on the same scale as government. So we got a waiver from the Cable Advisory Council to redirect that grant money from education to pay for all the government meetings. And we are now at zero for our extra or special meetings. But we're working something out with the town to be able to cover some of them if we ever go back to extra and special regular meetings. But that's always going to be a challenge, that if we want to serve the people of Fairfield, how we operate FairTV, we'd like to be able to respond to the requests we have for various different meetings.
All right. And you believe you'll be able to get through this year's budget season with the money that you have left in your budget, despite the fact that there's an increased amount of meetings because of this fill pile and other things?
Yes, we think we can get through the rest of the year in covering what we have to cover.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Walsh.
My pleasure.
Mr. Bateson.
Yeah, thank you. Mr. Jones, thanks for staying so late. Quick thing, I know, if I'm not mistaken, I believe planning and zoning meetings occur at McKinley School, and we don't have the ability to broadcast live there. If that is something that we can correct in the future or address, this taxpayer would appreciate it, because I know that's a lot of people would like to tune into those meetings live. You had mentioned something about possibly a revised ordinance, and then you had said sources of funding or additional sources of funding. Is there a plan from the FairTV Commission to, in some manner, monetize FairTV and charge for services, or is that what you're getting at, or seeking something from the state?
No, neither. Basically, through studying basically stations like us who operate and have to raise extra money, we studied how they did that and looked at how they did that. And the one we thought was the best model was sort of it's ironically, I call it a PBS type model, where we might seek sponsorships for individual shows, where you might see some kind of slide at the beginning of the show that said this broadcast is being brought to you by so-and-so, and not a commercial, just this broadcast is being brought to you by so-and-so. And then a bigger kind of arrangement or partnership deal with a potential donor would be what we would call a partnership, and where we would, in exchange for a donation of a certain kind of size or sum, we would run periodic thank yous to that organization. But again, not a commercial.
Okay, is any of these changes, not changes, but these ideas that would have to be codified in your
yes,
your
and
ordinance,
that's
right?
what we have. Yes, you're right. Yes, we have that before the RTM.
That is before the RTM now, or you're going to propose it?
It was actually meant to be seen tonight by the LNA committee, and they canceled. So it's with them, and we're waiting.
Okay. All right. So I imagine that's any proposed changes is on the town website, right, for their meetings?
I'm sorry, say that again?
Your proposed changes to the ordinance, I imagine that's online under the RTM's backup packet.
Oh, okay.
You wouldn't
yes,
know that, but that's what I'm going to assume.
I would. You're right. I wouldn't know it, but I'm going to assume too.
Okay, great. I'm good, Jim. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Ed. Any further questions? Mr. Walsh, is your hand up from last time, or do you have more questions?
Muted.
Why did the RTM cancel their meeting?
Because of, I believe, coronavirus. I don't think it was anything other than these recent issues and troubles.
Oh, that's interesting. Okay. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Jones.
Thank you guys all very much for everything you're doing to keep us going. Thank you.
Have a good night. Rest off. Okay, we're moving to Town Plan and Zoning, page 63. And we have Mr. Nguyen, right? Is on the line.
Mr.
Yes, sir. Good evening.
Mr. Brown, before we get started, I'm going to recuse myself because I do zoning work before, so just like I normally have done in the past. So I'm going to actually mute this and step out of my office so I don't hear anything and can't influence anybody in regards to this. So,
Okay, I'll text you when we're done.
can you please text me when to come back in the room?
Yes, I'll send you a text.
I appreciate it
All right, thank you.
very much.
Okay, Mr. Nguyen. We're on page
Good evening.
3.
The Town Planning and Zoning Commission budget is a 2.17% increase overall, which amounts to $14,441. 73% of that is salary related. 24% of that is a $3,400 increase in the fees and professional services line item, mainly due to an increase that we're currently having in land use appeals, which requires us to do transcripts of the public hearings. I think that line item was a bit of a victim of past 3-year averaging, which has been kind of on the low side, but we're seeing an uptick that goes beyond some past 3-year averages. Out of that line item, I will note that it is a $25,000 line item, but a little over 20,000 of that is fees for our regional planning agency, MetroCog. So 4,900 is what we will have for our own department out of that line item. Those are the major increases that are shown, and I'd be happy to answer any questions the board members may have.
Mrs. Marmion?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Sorry, I was offline before and I wanted to talk about FairTV, but so never mind. I got back on. So
Okay.
it's okay. Thank you.
Okay. So no questions for town planning and zoning then. All right. Any questions
Not
from
from
the board? No. Okay. Seeing none, thank you very much. Thank you for being here.
You're welcome. Did you want to have just my revenue line
Wait a
item?
minute.
I don't know
I'm
if you
sorry. I'm sorry. Yes. Yes. Page 22. Let's go to page 22.
So for our revenues, we kept a steady, exactly the same going forward in permit activity. We did not raise permit fees for this budget because we just experienced an increase or a new fee that doesn't show up on the department revenue stream, but the inclusionary zoning fee that the RTM passed brought in $510,000 through permit fees that we charge in this last fiscal year. So we did have an increase in a $510,000 in revenue that we did not have before, but that goes to the town's affordable housing fund.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Bateson?
Yeah, 510 caught my ear. I'm awake now. The inclusionary fee, Jim, you're the one. Your office is the one that collects that at point of entry for these permits?
We do, yes, sir.
And that gets, if I'm not mistaken, that's the money that gets turned into the Affordable Housing Trust?
Yes.
And you're saying the 510, is that, what year or what time frame is that? Do you know off the top of your head?
That was the last fiscal year. We predicted when this rolled out $350,000 in revenue. We exceeded that number, I think, largely due to the large building campaign that Sacred Heart University has undertaken. As of January 23rd, anyway, we've collected $687,000. So going for, carrying that $510,000 forward plus an additional fee structure, $687,000 collected so far. 56% of that has been paid by the two universities in their building campaigns. Sacred Heart has paid the lion's share of that with the timing of the rollout of that fee, coincided with their dorm expansion projects and some other fees, some other projects that they have done. So they've paid just under half of the $687,000 paid to date. Secretarial University has paid $327,000 of that.
Okay, so that number 687, that sounds like the number I heard when the affordable housing came before the RTM a couple weeks ago, right?
Yeah, the 510 that I'm quoting was just last fiscal year, ending June 30th.
Okay, so the balance in the Affordable Housing Trust is 687, which is what I heard it sounds like what I heard at the RTM.
Yeah, maybe a hair higher than that, but somewhere in that ballpark, yes, sir.
Okay, now that's not a revenue line item anywhere in this budget. That's basically a balance sheet item, right?
Correct.
Okay, I'm good, Jim. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Thanks, Ed. Mrs. Marmion?
No, I don't have anything. I'm trying to get the wave off.
Okay.
Not going away.
Any other questions?
There it goes.
All right. Thank you, Jim. Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Okay, next item is conservation. We'll go to page 71.
Good evening.
Good evening. I just need to, get Mr. Walsh back in here, but go ahead. All right.
He's going to recuse himself from this, too, Chairman.
Okay. I think you're right, every year? Yeah. Conservation?
Yes, he does.
Okay. Go ahead there, Brian. Did we lose him?
Looks like he's locked a little bit. You still there, Brian? He's using his computer instead of his phone.
If he's off, do you want to take a break for a few minutes and get him back on? That's up to you.
I was thinking that.
10 o'clock. Brian Carey, you there?
Okay, we're going to take a 5-minute break. Let Mr. Carey get back on the call, and I'm showing, well, what am I showing? It's 10:02? 5 minutes, 5 minutes, so like 10:07. We'll start up again.